Welcome to From Betrayal to Breakthrough, and here is a mini dose of Dr. Debbie where I'm sharing tips, suggestions, strategies, and sometimes just motivation to have you move past your betrayal once and for all. Hi there. So today I want to talk about one of my most favorite topics, and that's how do you turn pain into purpose? It's something that I've seen so often with so many thought leaders, and every time I hear their story or I learn about what they're doing, I'm always so amazed at the human spirit and our ability to be resilient and our ability to change and our ability to transform. And it's not what many choose. It's not what most choose, but it's something that when you see it, when you see the potential that you have after trauma, after crisis, it's just so empowering. So I just wanted to talk about it because who knows? Maybe there's something of course, you've been betrayed. That's why you're listening, watching this podcast. But there are other things that happen in your life too. And when you're able to take that pain and turn it into purpose, it just creates a version of you that never would have had the ability to be created had that situation not happen. And as I always say, that's trauma well served. So you may have heard of the hero's journey. And in the hero's journey, the just some person is sort of walking along, minding their own business. And then all of a sudden they meet the enemy, they meet the conflict, whatever it is. And there's this big, huge struggle. And everything comes into question. And then there's the fall. And you also may have heard of the dark night of the soul. And that's where it's like things can't get worse. Things have crashed and burned. You cannot believe what has happened to you. You never expected this in a million years. And here's the thing, this is where many people stay. But what happens in the hero's journey is all of a sudden they get it's this internal motivation. It's this inspiration, and they don't know how they're going to get there, but they're determined, and they put one foot in front of the other, and they think, well, I don't know how I'm going to figure this out, but I am. And they climb not back to where they were originally, but here's where they found their gift, this passion they didn't know they had, this purpose. And then from there, they just take off. If I were to say what is my absolute specialty, when I work with members within the PBT Institute, it's actually not the trauma piece. Our coaches are so much better at that than me. Mine is when someone sees their value, their worth after that trauma, what do they do with that? And that's actually when people leave. You always hear me talk about the 5 stages from betrayal to breakthrough. When they leave stage 3, they're leaving stage 3, they enter into stage 4, see their value, see their worth. That's when they create a new business, a new passion project, a new level of health, a new relationship, either with the person who hurt them on a very different level, or someone entirely new, because they're entirely new. They are deliberately and intentionally creating themselves. Now, you have seen this. You've seen this in people where maybe they had a health issue. And with this health issue, something happened and they figured, okay, I'm sure I'll be better by the weekend, and they rest or whatever. And then they don't get better. And then they go to, doctor to doctor to doctor, and they get all kinds of tests, and maybe they get put on all kinds of different protocols and medicine and all these things, and nothing's really working. And then when they've tried everything, and nothing has worked, they try that holistic, that alternative remedy, whatever it is. And then they don't, they wake up the next day and they're like, something feels a little bit better. They can't quite put their finger on it, but they're feeling a little bit better. And with that, they try it again, or they tweak it and they change it. They add something to it. And before you know it, they're feeling better. And because of this, they're so excited. They become certified in this modality, this whatever it is, and that's what they're teaching, right? And now here it was, when they had nothing left to lose, they were in this position of, what in the world do I do with this? They tried something they hadn't tried in the past. They created their own little kind of recipe here. And now they're healthy. They're feeling great. They're sharing that with others. You may have heard stories about where, let's say, a financial issue where someone was working in a job and they're working in that job, I don't know, 10, 20 years, everything's going well. And then all of a sudden they lose their job. And in the beginning, they're like, okay, no big deal. I'll go find another job. It was probably time for a change anyway. And they're looking and they're looking and they're looking, and nothing is really showing up. And as they're looking and time is passing, now they're kind of spending they're spending their resources. They're getting anxious, they're getting nervous, and they're wondering, wait a second, will I be able to find something else? This is becoming pretty scary. And then maybe add to it, they have a family and they have kids to feed, and they have expenses and they have bills and all of these things. Now they're really panicking. And when they have nothing left to lose, they start thinking, well, that little side business that they always wanted to do, if not now, when? And they take this chance and they're terrified and they don't know how to get this business off the ground, this widget they created, or this process or this program or this service. And they're messing around with it and they change things and alter it. And all of a sudden they bring it out to the market and they sell one program, process, widget, whatever. And they're so excited. And then they sell another and another and another. And before you know it, here they are in this business they never would have launched if they didn't lose the job, if they were doing just okay. And now who knows, maybe this business is so successful, they've become a business coach and they're teaching others how to launch a business when you have nothing or something like that. And it's so inspiring because these people have been through the worst of their experience and have found a way to create something, make it work. You've heard stories of this where someone, let's say, mothers of drunk driving, right? That was something where where parents lost a child to drunk driving, and then they go ahead and they speak about it to prevent others, and hope, and it's the way that they can help with their own pain by preventing others from going down the same road. They're doing something really good with something really bad. I mean, we've had so many people on the podcast where that's their story as well, whether it was a health challenge, a mental emotional challenge, something that really brought them to the depths of despair, where they figured out a recipe, a concoction, a way to get out of whatever it was for them. And because of it, they're helping others do the same. And I'm always I'm just so impressed with people who do this because, listen, you have every right to stay stuck, and you've been betrayed, you've been hurt, you've been duped, you've been blindsided, you've been lied to, cheated on, whatever it is, in your case. And you have your story and it's profound. Yes, it is. And I had my story too, right? The people I trusted the most, my family, my husband, betrayed me. And if I told anybody, I would get tons of sympathy. But I remember going through the PhD program and doing the study on betrayal. And there was just this moment. And I remember a moment where I just said to myself, I have no idea how I'm going to heal from this. But if I can, I'm taking everybody with me. Like, it was just this kind of knowing. And it was interesting because when the 5 stages showed up, it's like, how do you keep that to yourself? So I put the 5 stages into a program, just a program on its own, and it blew up. And then everyone wanted to work with me, and I was like, oh, how do I do that? How do I get these 5 stages into as many hands as possible? So I created our certification program, and then that started to do really well. And then it hit me. I said, well, I did the research. I know what works. What would happen if I put everything the research proved works under one roof, excluding everything else the research proved wasn't really effective? And that became the PBT Institute. And it's been just a thriving, beautiful online space for healing ever since. But it's interesting because one of the reasons why we have two certification programs, one to be a certified PBT, post betrayal transformation coach or practitioner, and one to become a certified PBT support group host. And I created those two different certifications for very different reasons. The certified PBT coach and practitioner certification, one of the reasons I created that was it's, I don't like the word hack, but there's an edge, let's say. It gives you this edge to do the work. I remember a million years ago when I was a personal trainer, there were days I didn't want to work out, but I knew I was facing people and they were counting on me to help them get their workout in. And if I didn't look the part, if I wasn't doing it myself, I would have had that imposter syndrome. How do you preach something you're not doing? I just wouldn't know how to pull that off. So it was just easier to do the work so I could just be authentic and say, this is what I'm doing. This is what I recommend for you. And it was sort of a no-brainer. I didn't want to do it, but on some days, but knowing I had to face people was a way that it forced me to do the work. And it's so interesting because I find with our certified coaches and practitioners, it keeps them honest. It keeps them doing the work on moving through the 5 stages from betrayal to breakthrough because they're representing the work. And I've seen so many stories of absolute devastation with their relationships, with family members who've betrayed them, whatever it is, and they've come back so much stronger. And it's because they were representing the work and moving through the 5 stages from betrayal to breakthrough and showing up and not going down. They couldn't afford the time or the luxury even of going down that rabbit hole of staying stuck because they had to show up for their clients. So it kept them honest. And in our other certification we have, and that's to be a certified PBT support group host. And these are people, they don't have to have a health background or be a coach or anything. They just want to hold space. They know how painful it is to be betrayed, and they don't want others to feel alone during such such a painful time. And I remember doing this study as well. And one of the things that came up was that in a time where we need support the most, we're the least likely to seek it because there's so much shame. There's so much embarrassment. We're mortified. We're so worried about being judged. We didn't even do anything. And here we are worried about being judged or criticized and so whatever that emotion is that we're going through, which is like all of them. And so instead, we struggle and we suffer in silence. And when we do, we have the most symptoms of post-betrayal syndrome because we're sitting here in our own thoughts without the support we need. And it's not support to keep us stuck. We don't need that. That doesn't help us. But support just letting us know we're not crazy, we're not alone, and there's a way through all of this. Because when we think there's no way out, it's even more harmful. And actually, that was one of the reasons why I wrote Trust Again, because I thought to myself, well, if people are just by themselves, at least they have a book, at least they have some way of helping them get through the stages. But out of all of the scenarios I described so far, whether it's a health issue, whether it's a financial issue, whether it's a tragedy, a trauma, maybe you went through divorce, devastation of some kind, disease, whatever it is, when you see someone who's been through it, they've figured out a way how to get to the other side. And that's what they're teaching. And they're shortening other people's learning curves because of what they learned. See, when you think of anybody like that, how you feel. How do you look at them? Aren't you? I know for me, I am so inspired. I'm so amazed at their journey. And I may have shared this on another podcast episode. I remember hearing a story by Tony Robbins, and he was interviewing these two sons. And the sons came from their dad was a drug addict, and he did all these horrible things, and he stole and he killed and he did all these terrible, horrible things. And he was in jail, and he had two sons, and one son was just like him, went down that same path, led the same kind of life in jail. That's where he was living. The other son completely turned his life around, was the opposite of what his dad was like. So Tony interviews both sons, and he interviews the son in jail, and he said, why? And why is this your life? And he said, well, look at my dad. What choice did I have? And he says, so he interviews the other son, and he said, why? How are you like this, leading such a different kind of life? And he said, look at my dad. What choice did I have? And it's amazing because it is so easy to remember and regurgitate, what we learned. And doing something differently takes a different approach. It's deliberate, it's intentional. I remember being pregnant with my first, and there were things that I grew up with that were just, in my mind, so wrong, so hurtful, so harmful. And I remember thinking when I was pregnant with my first, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to almost act like I'm dyslexic. And I'm going to, when she does something, he does something, I didn't quite know who I was going to have just yet. I had 4 kids, didn't know. And then early on I knew, but before I knew, I even said, okay, when this child does something, it will be natural for me to remember and regurgitate what had happened or what was said or done to me. But instead, I'm going to try this. I'm going to act like I'm dyslexic. And before the actions come out, I'm going to imagine they're completely jumbled up, and I will unjumble them before I do something, before I say something. I mean, listen, it wasn't 100%, but that one little trick, if you want to call it, broke the pattern for so many things and changed so many things I said and did. I mean, of course, you do the best you can. You always hear from your kids what you did wrong anyway, but that wasn't one of them, because so many of the things that I could have done if I wasn't intentional, if I wasn't deliberate, would have been done to all my kids. But by having this plan, it broke the chain. And so those changes were made right there. So when it comes to doing things differently, it does take a very different approach. And when it comes to not just living and leading that same life of what happened to you and being the recipient of what happened, and instead acting from a place of, yes, this happened, and I'm going to do something very different because of it. There's such a feeling of pride, of confidence, of empowerment, and it's because it's earned. When you take on yourself, when you do things that the old you didn't do because you didn't have the tools, you didn't have the resources, you didn't have access to these ideas. And now here you are in a position where this thing happened to you, but you're not satisfied with just being the recipient of it. Like, I remember thinking, am I just going to be the poster child for betrayal? I mean, I have some very powerful stories, and if I told them to anybody, I'd get all kinds of sympathy and everyone would feel bad for me. And I'm sure I could tell my stories and get lots of attention and all of that. And I was like, okay, well, you have that, and that's pretty much all you'd have. And then, going through the study, going through the 5 stages myself, as the study participants were explaining what was working, what wasn't working, all of this, and being, I guess, the guinea pig, the case study for all of this, and seeing how quickly it was working. And then because of that, just putting the 5 stages into a program and making it like a thing, just that feeling of pride and empowerment. It wasn't because I did anything special. Or anything you couldn't do. It was only because I was seeing things, implementing them, and sharing what I implemented. So I really want to make sure you take a look at your experience and what can you do based on what you've experienced, whether it's in your work, in your health, in your relationships, so that you're shortening the learning curve for others who are just walking on the path, possibly, that you've walked on. What can you do to make it easier, better for them? What can you do with your own experiences to teach others so that they can learn by your example? And, sure, we don't want to learn all of our lessons, that saying in spite of, because of. Like, it would be really easy and nice if all of our lessons were because they were so beautifully taught to us and we got the lesson. But unfortunately, when you take a look, and I know a lot of people who listen and watch the podcast, our greatest teachers, when you think about who your greatest teachers are, it's not always the most loving, kind, wonderful people who've crossed our paths. They're the ones who've hurt us the most. When we decide to take those experiences and use them as lessons, we learn so much. We can change so much. We can grow so much. And then instead of being so angry and bitter and resentful towards that person who hurt us, we can actually look and say, I never would have learned that had it not been for that person. Now, I get it as far as your betrayal experience goes. If I tell you something like that too early on, you'll be furious at me. But when you're moving through the 5 stages from betrayal to breakthrough and you're headed towards stage 4, that doesn't sound so crazy. We even have a very powerful activity in our signature betrayal to breakthrough program, and it's called a coherent narrative. And that's where you're actually writing, what was the benefit of this experience? Benefit, right? When I say that too early, that would fall flat. But at the right time, it actually gives us an opportunity to say, wow, you know what? I never would have realized how strong I was. I never would have realized how resilient I was. I never would have learned how self-reliant I was, how lovable, how worthy, how deserving. All of these things we learn that we may not have known or had access to beforehand. So I just want to make sure you take the time and look at any experience, any painful, powerful experience you've been through in your life, and you decide, was there something there that is worth teaching and sharing? And what can you do with something that really brought you down, that created that dark night of the soul for you, that where you had walked that hero's journey? And are you sharing that? And if not, why? And I know how it can be scary to put yourself out there, but think about all the people that are just entering the path that you've walked. When you share that level of satisfaction and fulfillment for helping another with something so personal, so near and dear to you, the feeling is just, it's so difficult to explain unless you actually do it. And I don't want you to deprive yourself of that feeling if you've been through something really powerful, really painful. And of course, when it comes to betrayal, and if you want to shorten someone else's learning curve, we can help you with that. That's what our certifications are for. So if I'm sharing this now and you're getting that feeling of, there are two feelings. If there's a feeling of like impending doom, this is not for you. But if it's that like kind of nervous excitement, then check in with your gut, see what your gut's telling you. Because if you are, let's say, a coach or healer of some kind, then you're eligible for our PBT coach certification. If you're a doctor, therapist, counselor, a psychologist, psychiatrist, you're eligible for our PBT practitioner certification. The truth is, it's the same certification. It's still the 5 stages. We're teaching you what the 5 stages are, what happens at each one of those stages, and how to move from one stage to the next. So if you want to have deeper transformations with your members, with your clients, with your patients, then that may be something for you, where you're actually serving them on such a deeper level and doing something really good with what you've been through. So that's an option for you. And let's say you have no background in anything I mentioned. You're a lawyer, or you're an accountant, or you're whatever you do. You're not working, but you know how painful it is to be betrayed. You know how crucial support is. You want to be with people either in person or online, holding your own support group, but not to sit and complain and commiserate, but to lift and inspire. well, maybe PBT support group certification is right for you. So I'm going to leave the links to certification in the show notes. But if you just go to thepbtinstitute.com, the PBT is in post betrayal transformation, thepbtinstitute.com, and you look at the top navigation, you'll see something that's a navigation tab that says certification. You could read all about it right there too. But really, the whole idea is to turn your pain into purpose. Whether you've been through divorce, death of a loved one, disease, devastation of some kind, abuse, neglect, betrayal, certainly, anything that was really painful for you, and you've learned a way through it, whether it's, like I said, you've mastered a certain way to be an empty nester, or you've learned how to really be a mom or dad that understands how to raise kids and still have a life, whatever it is. If you're not sharing this special, unique gift that you have, that's a crime. And maybe even it's just something so beautifully helpful and healing, where it's a type of art or something, just really something artistic. We had a person in our community, and she loved nature and planting, and she may even be listening to this episode right now. So, and she was imagine creating this way to grow gardens while healing. There are so many amazing things you could do. We had another person when I had our event to bring people through the transformation last year. There was another one of our members who created this whole artistic modality through her art, expressing yourself through art as you move through your betrayal. And it was so interesting because I'll never forget how her images, and she would share them with me, the colors would change, the types of shapes would change, and you could sense how her energy, how her emotions were changing as she was healing. Well, she turned that into a healing modality, and now she's helping people with that. And there are so many things, all unique to you. So if there's something in you right now where you're like, I I really like the idea of that, but I can never do that. You have that idea because you're the one meant to do it. And I want you to picture it. Now picture it floating in a thought bubble above your head. And now think about it. That bubble is out there. Do you want someone else grabbing your idea? No, that's yours. That's yours to grab. So if I can help you with that, turning that idea and making it a thing, that is my absolute thrill to do. If PBT, either of our certifications, resonate with you, feel like a fit, check that out, see if that's right. If you've done, whether it's to be a certified PBT support group host or certified PBT coach or practitioner, or if you've done something, you've healed from something, you've managed to create something, you started a new business, whatever it is, doing something really good with something really painful, that's trauma well served. That's turning pain into purpose. That's why we're here. You are not meant to stay sad and sick and stuck. No, you are meant to do something with your experience. And at the very least, maybe it's finding peace because of it. But whatever it is, if there's something there, don't stop. Don't leave it at that. Let us help you figure out a way to bring that into reality. It came to your mind for a reason, And, we get these beautiful ideas. And then when we don't take ourselves up on them, the window closes. We're filled with self-doubt. And then we say, oh, we can never do that, this and that. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. The difference between those who do and those who don't is just because they did. That's it. They thought, oh, it wasn't that it was any easier. It was just they had an idea and they didn't let it go. And you can be absolutely the same. So I hope that inspires you to take whatever vision, whatever idea you have to the next level. Of course, we are here to help you however we can. I hope this helps, and I'll see you next time. You need the right tools, support, and the right community to move through the 5 stages from betrayal to breakthrough. And we have all that within the PBT Institute. So join us at the PBT, as in post-betrayal transformation, thepbtinstitute.com. There's a version of you who's so confident, healthy, peaceful, and happy on the other end of your healing, and we can't wait to help you get there. We got you. Thanks for listening, and here's to your breakthrough.